The quiet suburban street was unusually still that afternoon, the kind of silence that carried an unsettling weight. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, but the faint sound did little to mask the tension that had begun to ripple through the modest house at the end of the block. Inside, an elderly woman sat in her wheelchair near the living room window, her frail hands gripping the armrests as if bracing for a storm she couldn't fully see coming. At her side, a small, scrappy dog rested, its eyes alert, ears perked, sensing the unease in the room long before it manifested. The peace shattered the moment her nephew stormed into the house. His face was twisted with greed and impatience, and his movements were erratic and aggressive. He lunged toward his aunt, shoving at her wheelchair with startling force. The elderly woman cried out, the sound echoing through the house, sharp with fear and shock. The dog, tiny but fierce, barked and leapt toward the aggressor, instinctively trying to shield its owner. But the nephew was reckless, kicking the small animal with no hesitation, sending it sprawling across the room. The air filled with the mix of yelps, cries, and the oppressive sense of danger. Neighbors peered cautiously through blinds and half-opened doors, witnessing the violent scene unfold but hesitant to intervene. The woman struggled to protect herself, her frailty no match for the raw aggression of someone fueled by greed and entitlement. The dog whimpered, limping slightly, yet tried again to block the nephew from reaching his vulnerable owner. Fear and helplessness hung thickly in the room, the kind that makes seconds feel like hours. Every instinct screamed that this confrontation could escalate further, that the danger was real and immediate. From the street, a figure appeared, tall, composed, moving with the calm precision of someone trained to assess threats and act decisively. A Navy SEAL had arrived, his eyes scanning the house and noting the unfolding aggression. At his side, a massive German Shepherd mirrored his every movement, muscles coiled, ears alert, eyes locked on the potential threat. The mere presence of the SEAL and his K9 shifted the energy of the scene, creating an invisible barrier of authority and readiness that was palpable even from a distance. The nephew, unaware of the arrival, continued his rampage, shoving at the wheelchair, shouting and gesturing wildly. The SEAL's eyes narrowed, taking in every detail: the nephew's stance, the weight of his movements, the positioning of the woman in the wheelchair, and the protective actions of the small dog. Each element was catalogued instantly, every potential escalation scenario running through the SEAL's mind in a fraction of a second. The German Shepherd mirrored his focus, coiled and ready, a living extension of tactical awareness, prepared to act if the aggression continued. Neighbors gasped as the SEAL entered the house with silent authority, his steps deliberate and controlled. The dog remained slightly behind him, a coiled guardian. "Stop!" The SEAL's voice cut through the chaos, calm, low, and unmistakably commanding. The words alone carried weight, halting the nephew's movements for a split second. It was the first sign that the scales had shifted. The aggressor's momentum met an authority he could neither predict nor ignore. The elderly woman, trembling but recognizing the protective presence, allowed herself a glimmer of hope. The dog at her side whimpered softly, sensing relief in the room, yet its vigilance never wavered. The SEAL's gaze locked on the nephew, unwavering and precise. Every micro-movement of the aggressor was catalogued: clenched fists, sudden shifts in weight, and the subtle twitch of his eyes. The SEAL positioned himself between the nephew and the elderly woman, creating a protective shield without needing to raise a hand. The German Shepherd mirrored the stance, muscles taut, eyes fixed, a warning that was silent but unequivocal. Further aggression would be met instantly and decisively. Patrons of the neighborhood, neighbors peeking from behind curtains and doors, watched in quiet awe, recognizing the transformation in the room from chaos and danger to controlled authority. The nephew's bravado faltered under the intensity of the SEAL's presence. His shoves became hesitant, his shouts faltering. The SEAL's voice, calm yet imbued with the unmistakable authority of experience, issued a single command: "Step back, now!" The German Shepherd growled low and restrained, a visceral echo of the warning. The small dog, sensing the shift, moved closer to its owner, finding reassurance in the larger canine's protective presence. The woman's hands, still gripping the wheelchair, relaxed slightly. Fear and helplessness began to give way to the first glimmers of safety and hope she had felt in what seemed like hours. The SEAL's eyes scanned the room with rapid precision, cataloging every detail: the nephew's posture, the distance to the wheelchair, the layout of furniture, and the positioning of both dogs. Every twitch of muscle, every subtle shift in stance was analyzed instantly. His mind moved with lightning speed, calculating the safest way to neutralize the threat while ensuring the elderly woman remained completely protected. The German Shepherd mirrored his vigilance, muscles coiled, eyes scanning, ears twitching at even the faintest sound. Together, they projected a presence that radiated controlled authority and unyielding readiness. The nephew, momentarily frozen by the SEAL's calm yet commanding presence, tried to mask his uncertainty with bravado. He took a half step forward, fists clenched, thinking he could continue his aggression. But the seal's gaze was unwavering, measuring and precise, leaving no doubt about the consequences of another reckless move. The low, restrained growl of the German shepherd amplified the warning. Every instinct in the nephew's body screamed that this was not a confrontation he could win. The earlier confidence born of greed and entitlement had evaporated, replaced with hesitation and unease. The elderly woman, still gripping the armrests of her wheelchair, instinctively moved slightly closer to the seal. The protective barrier he created was tangible, a living shield that communicated safety without a single aggressive act. The scrappy dog, previously injured and limping from the kick, nudged closer to the seal's larger canine, finding reassurance and strength. Patrons in the neighborhood, peering from behind blinds and doorways, held their breath, watching the balance of power shift decisively. What had begun as a violent domestic assault was now being neutralized with strategic precision and silent authority. The seal's voice, calm and controlled, broke the tense silence. "Step away, stop, now!" There was no shouting, no threat, yet every word carried the weight of absolute command. The nephew froze, uncertainty flickering across his face. His greed-driven rage had collided with experience, skill, and moral authority he could neither predict nor counter. Each pause, each micro-movement of the seal and the canine conveyed readiness, a subtle but unmistakable promise of immediate consequence should the aggression continue. The small dog beside the woman yipped softly, responding to the shift in energy, while the German shepherd maintained a taut, protective presence. Neighbors whispered among themselves, captivated by the quiet drama unfolding. The scene was a masterclass in controlled intervention. The seal had neutralized a threat not through force or intimidation, but through calculated presence, disciplined stance, and moral authority. The nephew's bravado crumbled further, his attempts at dominance now powerless against a force he could neither see nor challenge. The woman, sensing the stability and protection surrounding her, allowed a fragile sigh of relief, realizing that the danger had begun to recede. The seal subtly adjusted his position, ensuring the woman's wheelchair remained fully shielded while keeping his eyes locked on the nephew. The German shepherd mirrored the movement seamlessly, every adjustment reinforcing the protective barrier. The nephew shifted uneasily, trying to gauge the limits of this newfound authority, but each glance and slight movement from the seal communicated a singular truth: the aggression would not continue. Patrons, watching intently, understood that they were witnessing not just a physical protection, but a strategic, psychological dismantling of arrogance and violence. Finally, the seal allowed his gaze to meet the nephew's directly, calm and resolute. "You've done enough, step back and stay back." The German shepherd's low growl punctuated the command, a silent but unmistakable boundary. The nephew's fists lowered slowly, his eyes darting between the two dogs and the man who had effortlessly assumed control. The room, once filled with fear and chaos, was now under a quiet but absolute authority, leaving the nephew with no option but reluctant compliance. The elderly woman, feeling the protective presence of both the seal and the canine, allowed herself a small, cautious smile, the first sign of hope in what had been a terrifying ordeal. The seal's presence dominated the room, yet he remained calm, deliberate, and controlled, every movement purposeful. His eyes constantly assessed the nephew's posture, gauging potential escalation points, while his body subtly adjusted to maintain an impenetrable shield around the elderly woman. The German shepherd mirrored his stance flawlessly, a living extension of the seal's tactical awareness. Every muscle was coiled, every sense alert, projecting an unmistakable warning: any attempt at aggression would be met instantly with overwhelming precision. The nephew's confidence had completely unraveled. His earlier rage was now laced with uncertainty, the smug assurance he had relied upon replaced by hesitation and fear. He took a tentative step forward, fists slightly raised, only to freeze as the seal's unflinching gaze met his. The man's voice, calm yet infused with unshakable authority, cut through the charged air: "Step back, do not move." The German shepherd growled softly, a restrained sound that reverberated with threat without requiring a single act of violence. The nephew's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Every instinct screamed that defiance here was futile. The elderly woman, gripping the armrests of her wheelchair, instinctively leaned slightly closer to the seal. The protective barrier he provided was tangible, enveloping her like an invisible shield. The small dog, limping slightly from the earlier kick, huddled near its larger counterpart, reassured by the disciplined, coiled presence of the German shepherd. Patrons peered cautiously through windows and from doorways, witnessing a delicate dance of authority and restraint, their collective breath held as the tension thickened. It was a demonstration of control that spoke louder than words, the unshakable dominance of experience, training, and moral clarity over unchecked aggression. The seal's eyes flicked from the woman to the nephew, scanning every micro-expression, every slight shift in weight, every subtle motion. He adjusted his stance accordingly, closing gaps, subtly reorienting his position, ensuring the elderly woman remained completely shielded. The German Shepherd moved in perfect synchronization, coiling, shifting weight, and projecting an unwavering presence. The nephew's hesitation deepened with each subtle adjustment. He was now fully aware that his previous actions had no power in this controlled environment, that every aggressive impulse would be instantly countered with precision. The seal's voice broke the taut silence again, low, calm, and commanding. "This stops now, you've done enough, step back and stay back." The words carried moral weight, reinforced by the silent authority of his body and the disciplined stance of the dog. The nephew's hands dropped slowly, his chest rising and falling unevenly as he absorbed the full magnitude of the situation. The aura of control radiating from the seal left no room for doubt, no opportunity for defiance. The woman, feeling the protective presence, allowed herself a brief sigh of relief. The German Shepherd shifted slightly, maintaining its coiled readiness, muscles tense but controlled. The seal's eyes never left the nephew, scanning, calculating, and ensuring that no sudden movement could jeopardize the woman's safety. Patrons, witnessing this quiet mastery, leaned forward in their curiosity, some whispering in awe at the precision, strategy, and discipline on display. The scene was no longer one of confrontation. It was a study in tactical authority, psychological dominance, and protective courage. Finally, the seal allowed the woman a subtle adjustment, moving her slightly toward the door to ensure the path to safety remained unobstructed. Every step was measured, calculated, and precise, while the German Shepherd mirrored each motion seamlessly. The nephew, fully subdued, stared in disbelief, finally grasping that his aggression had been neutralized not through violence, but through skill, experience, and unwavering moral authority. The tension in the room remained palpable, yet the immediate danger had been contained. The elderly woman's face, still marked with worry, now began to show the first genuine trace of hope, a fragile but significant sign that relief was on the horizon. The room's tension had shifted from immediate chaos to a quiet, controlled intensity. The seal maintained a protective perimeter around the elderly woman, subtly adjusting his stance with each movement of the nephew, every shift reinforcing a barrier that could not be breached. The German Shepherd mirrored his handler flawlessly, coiled and alert. Eyes locked on the aggressor, ears twitching at the faintest hint of escalation. The small dog, once injured, stayed close to the larger canine, drawing reassurance from the discipline and power radiating from the pair. The nephew's hesitation grew with each measured adjustment of the seal and his dog. What had started as an impulsive act of greed and violence was now met with unshakable authority. He shifted uneasily, fists lowering slightly, confidence draining with every silent signal of restraint and readiness. The seal's calm gaze held him in place, an invisible force of experience, tactical awareness, and moral clarity that left no room for further aggression. The officers of circumstance, the neighbors peering through blinds, held their collective breath, witnessing the complete reversal of power in the room. The elderly woman, sensing the controlled presence of her protector, exhaled slowly. The tightness in her chest, the fear, helplessness, and anticipation of further harm began to ease. The seal subtly moved closer, keeping the wheelchair entirely between him and the nephew, ensuring her safety with minimal motion but maximum effect. The German Shepherd mirrored each subtle adjustment, coiled like a spring yet composed, communicating readiness without overt aggression. Patrons in the neighborhood whispered among themselves, captivated by the display of calm authority and tactical precision. The seal's voice cut through the charged silence, calm, commanding, and firm. "You've done enough, step back, leave her alone." The words were not raised in anger, yet their weight was undeniable. The nephew froze, understanding that defiance would meet immediate and precise consequences. Every instinct he had relied upon to intimidate and dominate was rendered useless against experience, training, and moral authority. The small dog barked softly in response to the shift, finding reassurance in the dominant presence of the German Shepherd and the seal. The woman allowed herself a subtle movement, leaning slightly toward the seal as he reinforced the protective barrier around her. Relief began to seep into her muscles, her hands loosening their grip on the wheelchair. The tension that had gripped her entire body for what felt like an eternity began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile sense of security. The nephew, now fully aware of the consequences of his actions, looked down, shame flickering across his face. His fists unclenched, his posture slumped, and the aura of control radiating from the seal left him powerless to continue. The German Shepherd shifted, muscles rippling subtly, maintaining a visual and psychological boundary. Patrons observed silently, understanding that the intervention had been precise and calculated rather than violent. The seal's movements were minimal but effective, every micro-adjustment reinforcing the protective shield around the woman and signaling to the nephew that any further aggression would be immediately countered. The room, once dominated by fear and chaos, had now become a space of controlled authority, restraint, and moral clarity. Finally, the seal guided the woman slightly toward the door, each step deliberate, ensuring the path was clear while keeping the nephew at a safe distance. The German shepherd mirrored each motion seamlessly, providing a constant cold presence that reinforced the barrier. Patrons leaned back slightly, exhaling collectively, their fascination and awe evident. The nephew, subdued and fully aware of the power he faced, made no further attempt to assert control. The woman, feeling the protective shield of the seal and his dog, allowed herself a small, genuine smile, a fragile but undeniable glimmer of relief and hope in the aftermath of a terrifying ordeal. The room had shifted completely, the tension that had gripped every corner now replaced with a quiet authority radiating from the seal and his German shepherd. The nephew stood frozen, every ounce of his previous confidence stripped away by the calm, disciplined presence before him. His earlier aggression, fueled by greed and entitlement, was now met with unwavering control and moral clarity. Every small gesture from the seal reinforced the protective barrier around the elderly woman, every glance from the German shepherd reminding the nephew that further missteps would be immediately countered. The elderly woman, still gripping the wheelchair, allowed herself to relax slightly as the seal subtly adjusted his stance, ensuring her safety remained absolute. The small dog, previously injured from the kick, nudged gently against the larger canine, sensing security and stability for the first time since the attack began. Patrons who had been watching from windows and doorways began to whisper among themselves, captivated by the masterful display of restraint, tactical awareness, and authority. What had started as a violent confrontation had transformed into a powerful lesson in controlled intervention and protection. The nephew's realization deepened with every passing second. His hands dropped, fists unclenching as he absorbed the full weight of his actions and the authority confronting him. His earlier assumption that fear and aggression could bend others to his will had been utterly dismantled. The seal's calm, unwavering gaze, combined with the disciplined readiness of the German shepherd, left no room for denial or defiance. Every instinct screamed that compliance was the only safe option, that further aggression would be met not with anger but with precise and immediate consequence. The seal's voice cut through the tense silence, measured and calm. "You've caused enough, step back and stay back." The words carried undeniable authority, amplified by the presence of the K9, whose low, controlled growl underscored the unspoken consequences of disobedience. The nephew, fully aware that his prior tactics were powerless, obeyed reluctantly. Patrons leaned back slightly, their eyes wide with awe at the transformation in the room, recognizing the quiet power of experience, discipline, and moral clarity. The elderly woman's hands, previously tight around the wheelchair, relaxed as she felt the protective perimeter reinforced with each subtle movement of the seal and his dog. Relief washed over her, mingling with the lingering adrenaline of fear and uncertainty. The small dog, sensing the emotional shift, wagged its tail slightly, finding reassurance in the presence of the disciplined German shepherd. The seal guided her subtly toward the door, maintaining a vigilant watch over the nephew while ensuring that she moved safely and steadily. The neighbors, silently observing from their vantage points, understood that they had witnessed a masterclass in control and intervention. The seal had neutralized a threat without resorting to unnecessary force, relying instead on strategy, presence, and moral authority. The lesson was profound. Power and courage were not demonstrated through aggression, but through precision, discipline, and ethical clarity. The nephew's demeanor reflected complete understanding, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance, and the atmosphere in the room, once dominated by fear, now resonated with a quiet sense of order and respect. Finally, the seal paused at the threshold of the door, ensuring the path ahead remained clear while keeping the nephew in a controlled, safe distance. The German shepherd mirrored the movements perfectly, coiled and alert, a silent but potent presence. The woman, now fully within the protective perimeter, allowed herself a small, genuine smile, the first sign of emotional recovery since the ordeal began. Patrons, having witnessed the seamless resolution, exhaled collectively, their awe evident in the soft whispers and nods exchanged. The room, once a scene of aggression and chaos, had been transformed by calm authority, strategy, and moral courage. The seal held his position firmly, every inch of his stance carefully calculated to maintain a protective shield around the elderly woman. The German shepherd mirrored him perfectly, muscles coiled yet controlled, eyes locked on the nephew, ears flicking at the faintest shift of movement. The small dog, still recovering from the earlier kick, stayed close to the larger canine, drawing comfort from the powerful presence beside it. The room, once dominated by chaos and fear, was now governed by controlled authority, each movement a silent message. Any aggression would be met with immediate, precise action. The nephew's confidence had completely evaporated. His aggressive gestures had faltered, replaced by hesitation and unease. He took a tentative step forward, only to freeze as the seal's unwavering gaze met his. There was no need for a raised voice. The calm authority radiating from the man and his canine conveyed a threat far more compelling than words. The low, restrained growl of the German shepherd reinforced the invisible boundary. Every instinct told the nephew that further action would be met with swift, unyielding consequences. The elderly woman, sensing the heightened but controlled presence, shifted slightly in her wheelchair. Relief began to wash over her, though traces of fear remained. The seal subtly adjusted his position, keeping her fully shielded while subtly nudging the path to safety clear. Patrons, peering cautiously from windows and doorways, held their collective breath, captivated by the precise, almost surgical control being exercised. What had started as a violent and frightening encounter had evolved into a masterful display of protection and strategic authority. The seal's voice, calm and commanding, cut through the tension. "Step back now, you've done enough." The words were simple yet impossible to ignore. The nephew froze, fully realizing the futility of defiance. His fists, once raised in aggression, now hung limply at his sides. The aura of controlled dominance, combined with the disciplined presence of the canine, left no room for negotiation or further misconduct. The small dog, sensing the de-escalation, moved slightly closer to its owner, reassured by the protective giants beside her. Neighbors, silent witnesses, absorbed the lesson unfolding before them. They watched as aggression was neutralized not through force, but through calm authority, tactical awareness, and moral clarity. The seal had orchestrated the resolution with precision, a protective barrier, subtle adjustments, and unyielding vigilance that rendered the nephew powerless. Every movement, every glance, every microexpression communicated dominance, restraint, and moral authority, leaving no doubt who controlled the situation. The seal subtly guided the woman toward the door, maintaining a protective perimeter as he ensured the nephew remained at a safe distance. The German shepherd mirrored the movement seamlessly, muscles coiled and ready, eyes fixed, ensuring the boundary remained intact. The nephew, fully subdued, stared at the floor, his earlier arrogance replaced by acknowledgement of his wrongdoing. The tension in the room began to dissipate slowly, leaving behind a charged sense of respect for the controlled power on display. Finally, the seal allowed himself a subtle exhalation, keeping one careful eye on the nephew as he moved the woman toward safety. The German shepherd remained coiled but relaxed slightly, sensing the imminent resolution. Patrons, observing the final stages, whispered among themselves in awe, recognizing the extraordinary balance of courage, strategy, and moral authority that had neutralized the threat. The woman, now fully within the protective shield, allowed herself a genuine smile, a signal that relief and safety had finally returned to her. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, soft and forgiving after the tense ordeal that had unfolded in the living room. The elderly woman, still trembling slightly from the shock, now sat fully within the protective presence of the seal, her hands resting more loosely on the wheelchair's armrests. The German shepherd remained alert, muscles coiled but controlled, eyes scanning the subdued nephew and the room to ensure no sudden threat emerged. The small dog, once injured, now wagged its tail slightly, finding reassurance in the strength and discipline of its larger counterpart. The nephew stood frozen, his face pale, eyes darting nervously between the seal, the German shepherd, and the woman he had sought to harm. His arrogance, entitlement, and greed had been stripped away by an authority he could neither challenge nor comprehend fully. The seal's calm, unwavering presence conveyed both readiness and moral judgment, leaving the nephew with no room to act recklessly. Every micro-movement of the seal and his dog reinforced a boundary that was absolute and unquestionable. The elderly woman, sensing that the immediate danger had passed, allowed a cautious exhale, relief seeping into her body for the first time in what felt like hours. She looked at her small dog, then at the German shepherd, and finally at the seal, a fragile smile breaking through her worry. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling yet sincere. The seal nodded subtly, acknowledging her gratitude without words, while the German shepherd gave a soft, reassuring nudge, a silent testament to the protective presence that had restored safety and dignity. The neighbors, who had watched from windows and doorways, exchanged quiet murmurs of awe. They had witnessed the full extent of a tactical intervention, a violent aggression neutralized not through brute force but through skill, precision, and moral authority. The lesson was profound. Courage and strength were not measured in fists or intimidation, but in disciplined presence, strategic action, and unwavering resolve. The nephew, now fully aware of his wrongdoing, remained silent, shame and comprehension etched across his face. The seal subtly guided the woman toward the door, each step deliberate and precise, ensuring the path remained clear and safe. The German Shepherd mirrored the movement seamlessly, providing a coiled protective presence that radiated reassurance. The small dog followed, limping slightly but eager to regain normalcy, comforted by the presence of the larger K9 and the disciplined authority of the seal. Patrons and neighbors continued to watch in respectful silence, absorbing the demonstration of tactical mastery and ethical courage. Finally, as the woman reached the safety of the porch, the seal paused, casting a final glance at the subdued nephew. No words were needed, the boundary was clear, the lesson learned. The German Shepherd remained vigilant for a moment longer, then relaxed slightly, signaling that the immediate threat had passed. The woman allowed herself a genuine smile, relief flooding through her body. The fear and humiliation that had gripped her were replaced by a profound sense of safety, dignity, and gratitude. The seal and his K9 turned and walked away down the quiet suburban street, leaving behind a scene transformed. The house, once the site of fear and aggression, now resonated with calm, safety, and moral clarity. Patrons and neighbors lingered, reflecting on what they had witnessed, a display of courage, strategy, and protective authority that would remain etched in memory long after the day had ended. The woman, seated safely on her porch, watched them disappear, her heart lighter, her spirit steadied, knowing that she had been shielded by someone trained, disciplined, and unwavering in the face of cruelty. As the seal and his German Shepherd faded into the distance, the woman's small dog barked once, joyful and relieved. The ordeal had ended, but its impact would linger, a testament to the power of calm authority, precision, and moral courage. The lesson was clear: true strength is measured not in aggression but see you in next part.